vigilance. The idea is that you experience awe in situations where it's important to be acquiring information that you can use later. It makes sense. If something is awe-inspiring because it doesn't fit with your understanding of the world, that's probably something that you should know more about if you want to survive. The feeling of awe directs your attention away from yourself and toward your environment, so you can acquire more information about this new, possibly life-changing thing, whether it's positive or negative. So awe might have given us a social advantage or an intellectual advantage, or maybe some combination of both. But no matter why the emotion evolved, we know that it's incredibly powerful, to the point that it can totally hack your brain and body. For one thing, it can improve your physical health. It's been linked to lower levels of inflammation, which plays a role in all sorts of illnesses. Awe can also change your perception of what's causing events to unfold. Studies have found that it makes people more likely to interpret a series of events as the consequence of something intentional as opposed to random chance. It's all part of the search for an explanation for something your brain is struggling to comprehend, which could help us explain why religion is a thing.
English philosopher John Locke gives us a pretty standard way to map out the boundaries of intuition, so that's where we'll start. Locke contrasts intuition to sensory perception on one side and to demonstration on the other. Sensory perception, he notices, is always about particular things. You see this pizza in front of you right now. Maybe you see that this pizza is round. But we aren't restricted to making judgments about particular things. When we judge that no round things are square, we aren't just thinking about that particular pizza, but about a more general and abstract truth. Judging that circles are different from squares, according to Locke, is intuitive. And at least in this kind of case, where Locke thinks we're recognizing features of our ideas, intuition is a perfectly good source of knowledge. We know that no round things are square through intuition. Locke also draws a contrast between intuition and demonstration. Intuition can tell us directly that a circle is not a triangle. But when we get to more complex questions, we need to use demonstration or explicit reasoning. So, for example, we can figure out that the interior angles of a triangle add up to 2 right angles. But we have to go through a series of steps to gain this knowledge, and that's demonstration. Demonstration requires conscious stages. Intuition is immediate. Locke notices that intuition and demonstration are connected, however. Each individual step in a chain of demonstrative reasoning is, or at least should be, intuitive. Contemporary thinkers still draw a similar distinction, using a variety of labels for it.
Montessori education is based on the principles developed by Maria Montessori, who opened her first school for children of low-income workers in an apartment building in Rome in 1907. The school was called Casa dei Bambini, Home for Children. This first casa was furnished with a teacher's table, a stove, a blackboard, some chairs, group tables for the children, and a cabinet filled with materials that Montessori developed in her earlier career when she researched how to teach kids who experience some form of mental disability. Maria Montessori created the materials after she realized that students seemed to understand complex concepts better when they engaged all their senses. Activities at this first school included personal care, such as dressing and undressing, care of the environment, like sweeping, dusting, and gardening. Otherwise, they were free to move around and play with the materials. Montessori did not teach herself, but instead oversaw the classroom work of her teachers. Montessori observed that children showed episodes of deep concentration and multiple repetitions of the same activity. Given free choice, kids showed more interest in practical activities and the materials than normal toys, sweets, or other rewards. Over time, spontaneous self-discipline emerged. Montessori concluded that working independently, children seemed to reach new levels of autonomy and became self-motivated learners. She began to see the role of the teacher as a facilitator of young human beings who are free to move and act within the limits of a prepared environment. The goal? To grow children to become independent and responsible adults who share a love for learning.
One evidence-based way to better remember what you've learned is through spaced repetition, or spacing out your learning in practice of new knowledge or skills. Although this might seem novel, this is hardly a new concept. It was first described in 1885 by a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus. Here's how it works. Say you plot your attention, or how much you remember of something, versus time. Now you learn that something on day 0. Without reviewing it, the forgetting curve will look like an exponentially decaying curve, which is kind of scary. If you review, or better yet, actively retrieve the material at increasingly spaced intervals after learning it, then the forgetting curve starts to flatten out, and you'll get a lot better long-term retention. Now, the goal here is to review the material at the right time. It turns out that the best time to revisit information that you're trying to learn is right around the time that you would naturally forget it. Since forgetting typically follows this exponential curve, the trick becomes timing your study sessions around it. Practically, this means having more widely spaced intervals between study times for the material that you're more familiar with, and shorter intervals between study sessions for material that you're less familiar with.
During a time when the church controlled what people could believe and the kings ruled over what people ought to own, John Locke, an English doctor, popularized 3 ideas that changed society and parenting forever. First, people keep fighting over their beliefs because nobody can actually know which one is true. To solve this problem, everyone should have freedom of thought and the right to choose their own religion. Second, kings can't just do as they please because people have natural rights to liberty, property, and life, and hence need to be asked for permission. Third, parents should avoid punishing their children, since the use of emotions to make them behave well can make them sensationalist. Instead, they should allow their children to be guided by thoughts. Locke's ideas on religion and democracy became the foundation of most liberal societies. His thoughts on education, however, may have been even more influential. Locke understood that most people doubt new ideas without any other apparent reason than them being uncommon. However, teaching children how to think rationally and all for themselves works. Education is therefore the key to freeing society from political and psychological tyranny, and his book, Some Thoughts Concerning Education, became a parenting guide to that world.
Fundamentally, the blackmailer is entitled. They believe that others are responsible for their feelings. They believe others must act in a way that makes them feel good, rather than taking responsibility for their own feelings. Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. What about the person who lets themselves be blackmailed? Why do they allow that? The blackmailer refuses to take responsibility for their own feelings, but the blackmailee is the exact opposite. They take responsibility for feelings that aren't their own. While the blackmailer wants everyone around them to act a certain way, the blackmailee wants everyone to feel a certain way. While the blackmailer feels entitled, the blackmailee feels like they owe a debt. While the blackmailer passes judgments, the blackmailee is always looking to be positively judged. They take the judgments of other people very seriously. If someone says to them, "You're a very selfish person," they believe it immediately. They think, "Am I selfish? I must be selfish. Why would someone say that if I wasn't? Oh God, I'm such a bad person. I need to fix this right now." While the blackmailer wants everyone to serve them, the blackmailee wants to serve everyone. They want to be liked and approved by everyone, and they'll do just about anything to get it. While the blackmailer believes what they say is the truth, the blackmailee believes that what others say about them is the truth. And while the blackmailer's mind is dominated by taking, the blackmailee's mind is dominated by giving.
our memories are sometimes unreliable. And though we still don't know precisely what causes this fallibility on a neurological level, research has highlighted some of the most common ways our memories diverge from what actually happened. The Mall study highlights how we can incorporate information from outside sources, like other people or the news, into our personal recollections without realizing it. This kind of suggestibility is just one influence on our memories. Take another study, in which researchers briefly showed a random collection of photographs to a group of participants, including images of a university campus none of them had ever visited. When shown the images 3 weeks later, a majority of participants said that they had probably or definitely visited the campus in the past. The participants misattributed information from one context, an image they'd seen, onto another, a memory of something they believed they actually experienced. In another experiment, people were shown an image of a magnifying glass and then told to imagine a lollipop. They frequently recalled that they saw the magnifying glass and the lollipop. They struggled to link the objects to the correct context, whether they actually saw them or simply imagined them.
But if not trying to escape and trying too hard are both bad choices, then what are you supposed to do if you get stuck in quicksand? The trick is to stay calm. First, get rid of any heavy items that you're wearing or carrying, as they'll only drag you deeper. Then, try to lean as far back as you can to create more space for yourself. Water will come in and fill the gaps you create, which will make it easier for you to move and pull your body towards the surface. If you can, grab a stick and wedge it underneath your back. This will help to increase your leverage. Hopefully, you'll get help from emergency services, but if not, you can use these tips to get out on your own. It will be a long and exhausting process, since just to free your foot from a puddle of quicksand, moving at a rate of 1 centimeter per second, it would require the same amount of force as it does to lift a small car. And once you're free, you'll probably be in a lot of pain. With all that pressure from the densely packed sand, you might emerge from the quicksand with permanent nerve damage or without a leg. If you do manage to come out in one piece, well, maybe tread a little more carefully in the future. But don't let this one sucky experience keep you from another adventure. Put your best foot forward and take a walk on the wild side.
Scientists use a technique known as Psychomotor Vigilance Tasks, or PVTs, to understand the impact of sleep deprivation on humans in studies. Simply put, it's a reaction test. A red button randomly turns green, and people have to push it as fast as possible. Not so surprisingly, those who get 8 hours of sleep over a 2-week period show very few lapses in attention and no cognitive declines. But those groups that receive either 6 or 4 hours of sleep see declining PVT results on almost a daily basis for the entire 2-week period. Of course, the 4-hour group performs the worst. But these results don't just show a loss of concentration, they show full lapses in awareness called microsleeps. In other words, their brains aren't just slower, but shutting off for moments at a time. When looking at the results deeper, scientists concluded that getting 6 hours of sleep for 10 days in a row was the same as not sleeping for 24 hours straight. That's the same cognitive decline as being legally drunk. And if you get 4 hours of sleep for 11 days, it's like you haven't slept for 48 hours straight.
Essentially, when the brain sees something that's novel, it has to burn more energy to represent it because it wasn't expecting that. This feeling that things are going in slow motion is a trick of memory. In other words, when you're in an emergency situation, a part of the brain called the amygdala comes online. This is your emergency control center. It lays down memories on what amounts to a secondary memory track. These are very dense memories. And you're noticing everything around you and writing it all down. So when the brain reads that back out, there's such a density of memory there that the brain's only conclusion is that must have taken a long time. And I think this offers an explanation for why people think that time seems to speed up as they grow older. And it's because when you're a child, everything's new to you. You're figuring out the rules of the world. You're writing down a lot of memory. And so when you look back at the end of a year, you have a lot of memory of what you've learned. But when you're much older and you look back at the end of a year, you're probably doing approximately the same stuff you've been doing for the X number of previous years. And so it seems like the year just went by in a flash.